So thanks for
Let's do it.
everyone for joining us at this event. This is Productivity Apparatuses with Hanan. My name is Ella. I'll be moderating. Um, Before we get started, just a quick reminder, if anyone has tech issues, just use the chat to let me know and I'll do my best to help you out. Inside the chat, you can raise your hand, ask our speaker to go slower, or of course send a message. Feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat, and I'll set it aside for Kyle to answer during the Q&A at the end of his presentation. Please mute yourself until then, and also please note this will be recorded and shared with everyone when LibCon is over. So Kyle, take it away.
All right, thank you, Ellen. How's everybody doing? LibCon. So far, it's been pretty awesome. Okay, so I wanted to just mention that I proposed this because I really love time management and productivity just as a subject. It's something I'm really interested in, but also I really felt that all of us are kind of struggling, right, with productivity since we've been working from home. That makes it incredibly challenging, adds another layer to it. So I felt that this might be something that all of us could kind of benefit from. This presentation is going to be like super fast and rapid fire. I apologize for that, but there's a lot of content in here. So I'm just going to be going very quickly. But just to let you know that I created a handout that has all the information in it that you'll be able to take with you at the end. So you don't necessarily need to be taking notes throughout. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there. All right, let me share my screen here. Okay, everybody see my PowerPoint? Okay, cool. All right, so productivity apparatuses. Let's do this. All right, so before I start talking about how to do some of these productivity tips and using some of these tools, I wanted to talk a little bit about just the essentially like the concept or the way some of the research that I've done related to productivity. The best business book that I've ever read is called The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. This is a really famous book in the business world. Peter Drucker is a genius, and this was published originally, I think, in 1967, but it's still just as relevant today as it was when it was published. And even though the title says Effective Executive, it's really just talking about knowledge work. So it applies to everything that we do. This is essentially a book about how to manage knowledge work. It's actually a very small book. It's only about 90 pages, but the chapter that's relevant for this presentation is chapter 2, which is Know Thy Time. So essentially, chapter 2 talks about how time it's the only non-renewable resource in the world. You could always make more money, you could always get more stuff, you could always meet new people, but time is something that just goes away and it's always gone. So managing your time is the most important thing you can do, essentially, to boosting your own productivity. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's something that I think I have to stress. And then the second thing is something called the Eisenhower time matrix. So I read about this in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it's essentially a matrix with an X and Y axis, and there's 4 quadrants, and essentially all the activities that you can do or tasks can kind of be mapped to this time matrix. So you got quadrant 1, so you have the columns, which are urgent and not urgent, and then the rows are important and not important, right? And so each one of these quadrants is essentially a combination of these two. So quadrant 1, this is things that are essentially important and urgent, right? So these are emergencies, crises, deadlines that you have immediately, like things that have to be done immediately. Urgent essentially means time sensitive, or that there's a deadline attached to them. All right, so this is quadrant 1 activities. And then quadrant 2, now these are things that are important, but they're not urgent. There's not a time sensitive or deadline attached to them. So this is probably the most important quadrant, because this is where you have you learn new skills, or you make big life changes. And so these things are important, but the big problem is because they're not urgent, we struggle with finding time to get to them. That's the thing. So usually all of us wish we spent more time in quadrant 2, but it's something that all of us really need help doing, essentially. Quadrant 3 is the things that are urgent and important. not important, I'm sorry, urgent and not important. So this is essentially most work, email, meetings, paperwork that you have to do, like all that kind of stuff. These are things that they're not particularly important, but there is a time sensitive nature to them and you have to do them. And then quadrant 4 are the things that are not important and not urgent. So essentially time wasters, like meaningless recreation that doesn't really add any kind of value. So that's essentially the 4 quadrants. So quadrant 3, we don't really have any kind of control over what goes on in quadrant 3 because it's essentially fixed. But quadrant 1 and quadrant 4, we do have control over those. So some crises and emergencies are going to happen no matter what you do. But if you stay proactive, you can kind of keep a lot of the things from going into quadrant 1. So there's a way you can, by being proactive, you can minimize how much activity takes place in quadrant 1. And then quadrant 4, a certain amount of activity in this quadrant's fine. You just got to make sure that it doesn't get out of control, that you kind of control how much time is going into quadrant 4. So if you can redirect time from quadrant 1 and quadrant 4, you can move them into quadrant 2. So that's kind of like the goal, essentially, of using these tools, is that you can kind of move time and get more value out of the time that you have. So I'm going to be talking about different tools, essentially software, applications. I'm going to spend some time on Outlook because email is such a huge time suck. And one of the things I wanted to point out there is that most of these are paid products. These are software that has a cost attached to it. There's either a license you have to pay for, or there's a license that you subscribe to. There's a couple free ones, but I just want to throw that out there, that there are costs attached to many of these pieces of software. When it comes to tools, I've tried lots of different ones just because I like experimenting with these kind of things. But the ones that I find the most problems with are complex tools that are really difficult to set up and then difficult to essentially work into or adapt into your daily kind of workflow. Those are the ones that I tried, and in the end I didn't end up sticking with them. But the simple tools are the ones that I end up working with regularly because they're just easier to implement. Sometimes the simple tools have a lot of setup in advance, but once you get them up, the system working, then essentially you can use these very easily. That's essentially what I'm looking for when I'm vetting these kind of tools. So this is an example of complex and simple. So there's a very famous book in this space called Getting Things Done. It's written by David Allen. It's an excellent book. It's essentially an entire system for managing your life and everything in it. I don't use the entire system. The system itself is very complex, but I do use pieces of it, like aspects of it, I feel that I've been able to kind of integrate into my work. And one of them is a good example of this. So what he has is called the 2-minute rule. So his 2-minute rule is if a task takes 2 minutes or less, do it now. Just do it immediately. Don't reschedule it. Don't delay it. Just get it done immediately. And this is kind of like a simple rule of thumb. And, 2 minutes, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, something around then. But I've been using this for years and it really does work. It's not the time you'd have to do to reschedule it or put it off. It's just not worth it. You might as well just get that test done then. That's a great example of a simple tool. Okay, so the 2 big monsters, obviously, in time management are email and then your task or the task you have to accomplish. So if you can get a handle on these 2, then you're going to be, that's like more than half the battle. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the ways to manage email and your tasks. And then the thing with these tools is that they're powerful on their own, but the cool thing is that they all, like a lot of them, integrate with each other. So you get this kind of synergy where they start working together, and that's when you see some real gains. And in the end, you have to find what works for you. I mean, for me, I found that these tools are things that work for me, but I've used lots of tools that didn't work for me. So you have to kind of experiment and try out different things. So what I'm showing you today are tools that I use myself, but there's tons of stuff out there. So what I use might not work for you. So you got to kind of use what works for you in the end. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over here to, let's go to Outlook first. Okay, so Outlook, everybody's favorite. So something about I'll say too is that I use the desktop Outlook client. I don't use the web app. So the stuff I'm going to be showing you today is applicable to the desktop Outlook. I know the web app is pretty good, and most of the things I'm showing you are probably available in the web app, but I don't necessarily know that for sure. So that's why I just want to kind of throw that out there. So you get your emails coming in, and one of the first things you can do essentially is to filter your incoming mail. So that way, because not all emails are created equal. Some emails are more important than others. So you can do that by creating what are called rules. So these are filters in, I think they call them filters in Gmail, but essentially a rule, you can do a lot of different things, and you can assign rules to as many emails as you want. So let's just say that I wanted to assign a rule to this email right here that Lindley had sent out. So if I right click on this, I can just go to rules, and then I could say create rule, and I'll create a rule based on that. And I could say a lot of different things, right? I could say, okay, you know, the rule is going to be any email from this person, or maybe a subject that contains a certain text. And then going into the options, you could do a lot of different things with it. So you can see it's kind of a little mind-boggling, like how many different things you could do as far as setting up the rules. But let's say any email coming from Lindley, and then I could do a lot of different things. I could say move it to this folder. I could say assign it to a category, move it to forward it to another email address. So there's almost no limit to what you can do with the rules. And they're a very powerful tool. So setting up a system for your incoming mail is kind of like your first line of defense, because the email just keeps coming, it just keeps coming. So you know, you want to be able to set it up in such a way where you can manage it through these rules. And another thing that I find very helpful is what's called a 5-week folder. So I have my 5-week folder right over here. So what this is anytime I have an email in my inbox, as soon as I archive it, it goes into this 5-week folder. And essentially, the thinking here is that if you're going to need that email, it's most likely going to be within the next 5 weeks or so. So that way I can just, anything that comes in my inbox, I just archive. It encourages me to keep my inbox clean. And then everything kind of dumps into that 5-week folder. And if I do have to look for something, I only have to look through 5 weeks worth of email rather than 6 months or a year or everything. And then I have a rule set up that after emails are 5 weeks old, they're older than that, then they automatically it moves them out of the 5-week folder and into just like an all mail kind of folder. So that's a simple way to use a rule to do this. And then I keep my inbox clean. I put the emails in this 5-week folder, and I can just look for them if I need to. And of course, I rarely, if ever, have to go into the 5-week folder. Okay, so that's one way to manage your email. So the next thing what you want to do is you want to separate out whatever tasks you get from email, right? So you get an email, there's a communication there, but there also might be some work that you have to do, some sort of task. And Outlook is not a very good tool for managing tasks. So I have this, you know, email I sent right here. This is totally a task email. So here's an example, right? So I get this email from a colleague, and it has a task in there, you know. So I need to figure out, so I could respond to this and say, yeah, sure, I'm going to work on that, but that communication doesn't have anything to do with the actual task. So now I have this task. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into a task manager, right? So I know what I need to do, figure out the woodchuck thing. I'm going to archive this email. So now that goes into the 5-week folder. And then I'm going to go over to my task manager. So this is a task management software that I use. It's called Todoist. You can see it up here in the address bar, Todoist. That's all it does. It just manages tasks. It's a web-based application. You could use this on in any operating system. There's a mobile app for it. And it's just a simple task manager, but it has all kinds of powerful things you can do with it. So let's say here's some tasks I have for my today's to-do list. I'm gonna go ahead and add a task. Woodchuck. Let's say woodchuck task. I'll say that. So now I have a new task in there, right? But there's lots of other things I can do with it as well. So right now it's just sitting in here. Let me show you this. So maybe I want to change the date on that task. It's due today, but maybe I want to change it. So I could say, oh, let's reschedule this till tomorrow, or let's reschedule this till next week, or maybe on a particular day. I could just choose a day and reschedule it till then. Or maybe I want to add a specific time. So maybe I can say, okay, I want to do tomorrow at 2 p.m. So now what's going to happen is, let me do this. So now it's going to be due tomorrow at 2 p.m. So then tomorrow I'll get a push notification letting me know that that task is due when I set this time in there. And I'm just going to take this out because I want to, okay, here we go. So I can remove that time if I want to. And I could add a priority to this task. So there's this little flag right here. So I could say the default is this priority 4, which doesn't have a color attached to it, but I could add a priority. So maybe I want to say this is priority 1 task that's more important. And that puts it right to the top of the list because it's got this red color. And you can use these however you want. What I do is I assign anything that's priority 1 is something that has to be done today. It's not, I can't reschedule it. That's something that's got to be done today. That's what I use the priority for. And then maybe I want to rearrange those tasks. I could take this and I could just kind of drag them up and down. So it's easy to rearrange the list. And then you could add subtasks to a particular task. So if I go in here again, if I click on this little word bubbly looking icon, I could add a subtask here. Okay, so now I have a subtask attached to this. Or I could add a comment to it. I could say, just add some notes that I need, that I wanted to add to this task. I could add a file. I could attach a file to this. I could drag and drop files, or I could use Google Drive or Dropbox, kind of integrate with those, which is really cool. I could do a voice note if I wanted to. And there's like a change log here where it'll show you like whatever activity has happened on this task. And then you see this little arrow next to this. I click on this, and then there's my subtask right there. So I can say, oh, complete this, and then click on that, and it closes out that task. That's all you got to do is click on that little circle, and then you complete your task. And then in addition, those are just individual tasks, but you can create what are called projects. So over here, I have a list of all the different projects, and projects are essentially lists of tasks that are not attached to a date. They're attached to a particular project. So like here's an example of my task project just for this conference presentation. So I have a bunch of tasks in here that are all related to this particular project. And you can create as many of these as you want. You can add people, so you could do a collaborative project. If I click on this, I could add somebody, and it'll send them an email inviting them to that project, and then you could share that project. Both of us add and complete tasks, add comments and files. When I was working with my graduate assistant, I set her up in Todoist, so then I had a project where I would just use that to delegate work to her. So I would just say, hey, could you please work on this? And then she could, if she had some trouble, she could update the task with a particular comment, something like that, or change the files, and then I can go in there at a glance and see if she's completed, what task she's completed, and what her progress has been. So collaborative projects are super easy to manage in this. You could do a keyword search up here if I wanted to, just to search for a task. You could click on this upcoming, so you could see, this is the default is today, but I could look at any day and see what tasks are on that particular day, what tasks are assigned to that particular day. And all this is pretty powerful, but one of my favorite things about Todoist is I can attach, it uses natural language commands. So let's say that I'm in a committee, I have a project meeting every Wednesday at 10, and I find out that I have a doctor's appointment or something like that, and I'm going to miss next week's meet. Right. So what I want to do is I want to send an email reminder. I'm going to set a task to send an email reminder to the team, letting them know, hey, I won't be there. Right. So let's say I'm just going to say doc appointment reminder. And then I could just say Wednesday, 9:30 a.m. And you see how it highlights it in red like this? So then I click on add task and it's going to save that task at that particular time. Or I could say August 1st. Or and you could use, there's lots of different combinations of natural language you can use, which is such a huge time saver. So maybe and you can add recurring tasks this way too. So I could say something like every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And now it's going to add this task in, and that task is going to recur at that time. And it gets really, really in detail. So I could say something like every Tuesday starting 9/1, ending 10/6. So now it's going to add a recurring task in that starts on the September 1st, ends on Tuesday 10/6. And I could say at 10 a.m. And then if I wanted to add a priority to it, I could say P2, priority. So you could, there's essentially a natural language command for everything you could do in Todoist, which is super awesome. All right, so I'm just going to get rid of this. Just want to show you how that works. And one of the other cool things you could do is you can do these location reminders. So let's say I need to get something from the store, right? I could say paper towels, and then over here, click on this little clock. And then I could choose, instead of a date and a time, I could choose a location. So I could say Stop and Shop. And then I could scroll through, choose the Stop and Shop that's near me. So I'm just going to choose this one so you can see it. And then what this is going to do is when I go to that store, it's going to buzz me with a reminder for that essential, like whatever that is that I lifted in there, just using your phone's GIS. Which is really cool. I'm very forgetful when it comes to stuff, so that's a great feature. And then you can also set up goals for yourself. So if I click on this little thing over here in the corner, you can see here, so these are I have a goal of 10 tasks a day. You could change that to whatever you want. I can kind of look at a glance and see how productive I've been, which days I did better than others as far as my tasks. I could look at my weeks and see how I did on those. And then they have this thing called Karma, which is essentially kind of like a gamified feature where the more tasks you complete, like the higher your Karma level goes up. And then there's like these different levels for the Karma. And so it's, it's kind of like a gamified thing. It doesn't actually impact anything, but that's part of this as well. Todoist has a lot of integrations kind of native to it. So like if you go to the website, you can see here that like these are some of the pieces of software that like have native Todoist integrations. So if you use Slack a lot or Google Calendar, all these other pieces of software, a lot of these have something where they have a plugin or something that you could download and you can connect your Todoist directly to that. There's one I have for Gmail where I just go in and I can integrate with Todoist. It's really useful. This is paid software. There's a free version, but the things I'm showing you now are from the paid version. I believe the license is $36 a year is what I pay for this. So it's worth every penny. So I highly recommend that. And when I was talking earlier about integrations and how the tools kind of work together, so let me show you an example of that too. So coming back here, my Outlook. So here's this, you get this project email. It's got a lot of information in it. It's got all these different tasks. It's got dates for future meetings. Maybe there's a handout in here. So what you can do is you could send this into your Todoist. So you could email into it. So the Todoist will give you an email address for your projects where you could send emails in there. So I could say, I'm going to forward this to my Todoist. I have my inbox saved in my address book. And then the subject is going to be the body of the task. So for this, I want to say something like LibCon project. I'm just going to say that. And then I could also add some metadata here. So if I use the greater than and less than signs, I could say date, today. I could say P1. I want to make it a priority 1 task. So then I send this. And then now that I sent that into my task manager, I can go ahead and archive that email into my 5-week folder. I'll get that out of my inbox, but then come back here, and here it is. So LibCon Project 2, got the priority 1, you can see the red, and then if I click on this, this is the coolest part. So you, in the attachment area, I click on this, here's the entire body of the email attached to that task, and then over here is the Word doc handout. So it automatically attaches all that stuff. So I can get that email out of my inbox, but also have this task into my task manager. And now that it's in my task manager, I can change the due date, I can move it around, I can do lots of different things, I can add time-based reminders, whatever I need to do with it. So it's the best of both. Keeps your inbox clean and make sure that you're not going to lose track of whatever tasks. I can assign a project to it. Okay. So this is how essentially like email and task management essentially can work well together, because you use something like this to manage your tasks. It keeps your email clean. All right, so that's the first one I want to show you. So the next one I want to show you is an RSS reader that I use called InnoReader. So RSS, if you haven't heard of it, stands for really simple syndication. So I'm not a programmer. I don't understand what's going on behind there as far as the XML file is concerned. But the gist of it is that websites put out what's called a feed, and then you'll use a reader, a client, to monitor these feeds from different websites. So essentially what it lets you do is it lets you track updates of many different websites all in one place. So it's a huge time saver. So this is InnoReader. That's the one that I use. There's tons of RSS clients, so there's lots of them out there. This is a web-based one, and in this, what you do is you subscribe to the feeds of the different websites that you want to track, and then you can come in here and you could read them all in one place. So you can see down here I have these different subscriptions, and these little numbers right here next to them show you what updates there are from those websites. So I could see that there's been 3 from this, 3 from that. So that means that there's been 3 updates. These ones that don't have any numbers next to them, there hasn't been any updates to those web pages since I've last read them. So if I click on this, this is a blog that I follow. So here's all the different blog posts. And then I could click on that and I could read that blog post right here in the feed reader. So this is best for websites that don't update regularly, like things like blogs, things like podcasts. You're not going to use this for subscribing to something like the New York Times for the most part, because they put out so much content that you don't even need to wonder whether there's an update. You know there's 5 million updates. So this is really useful for things that don't update frequently. So you don't have to go checking them all over the place. You can kind of monitor them all in one place. So if I wanted to add a feed, I could click on this little plus right here, and I could say add feed. So let's say I was looking for something on true crime. I like to listen to podcasts on that or something. So I could do a keyword search, and it's going to show me some different feeds that are out there related to this that I could then subscribe to, and then that'll be something that it'll track on updates on that. So there's different things. There's podcasts, blogs, websites. So that'd be an example of how you'd add that. You could look at, there's lots of different ways you could view these. So looking at this, I use the kind of list view. So I like to follow TED Talks, right? So here's the TED Talk feed. So I could see at a glance what are the latest TED Talks. I use this view where you see them in a list, but you could change this. So I could say, show me them in the card. For people that are a little more visual, this might be better. So then you can kind of take a look and see, okay, what TED Talks are interesting. Click on one of these, take a look at that real quick. Inside these, you can save articles. Like if there's one that you want to read or you want to save for later, you can send them to people. So in here, I could send them, I could post it on Facebook, or I could post it on Twitter, or I could email it to somebody. So you have all those kind of sharing functions, kind of native in the application. So it's flexible. And then one of the things I really love about feed readers is that you could use them to track your email newsletters. So I know we all subscribe to like tons of these things. Some of them are not very useful, but other ones are actually useful. But I hate having to read these in my email. So what you can do is you can set it up so you can read those in your feed reader. So if I wanted to, I would say, okay, add newsletter, and then I could type in a newsletter name, and then it'll actually give me an email address right here. That'll be whatever the name of that I type at innoreader.com, incoming, and then I'll have a separate email address that I could send that newsletter to, and it'll come into my feed reader, and I can just read it there. So what I would do is I would set up this feed email address, and then I would use a rule in Outlook that would say, forward this anytime I get this newsletter, forward it to this email address, and also skip the inbox and just go straight to the 5-week folder. That way I'm only reading them in here. I'm not reading them in my email, and they're also not even clogging up my inbox. And that's kind of another one of those integrations, stripping out the tasks, stripping out the things like reading and things like that. Then your email is just communication only, and it becomes a lot more manageable. So you can see I subscribe to a lot of different things, but I have a Northeastern folder. Here's this is the DeMore McKim newsletter. So this is what that would look like. So I have those in here, so I can just read those, and I can just take a quick look and see when there's an update. Here's the news at Northeastern. You could do a lot of cool things. I subscribe to the Northeastern subreddit in here. You can subscribe to any subreddit, and you can get an RSS feed for that. So I could just take a quick look in here and see what people are talking about in the subreddit. I subscribe to like a massive amount of librarian blogs and other things that I like to keep track of, trying to stay up to date. The Chronicle of Higher Education, EDUCAUSE, in the library with the lead pipe. So anything like that, it's really useful for that. And I also find that it's useful because it separates, it puts a fine, almost like container around your reading as an activity. So you're not mixing up your reading with your communication or your tasks. So that way, like if I'm going to read these newsletters, I'm not going to suddenly see an email with work attached to it right above that when I went in there just because I just wanted to read. That's not going to happen. When I'm in here, I'm just doing reading, and that's it. I can set up some time on my calendar, which I do every day, where it's dedicated to reading, and that's the only thing I'm doing. And I'm just doing it in this application. Where I'm working on tasks, I'm just doing it in Todoist. So kind of compartmentalizing work like that I found to be really useful. I subscribe to the library's event calendar. You can get a feed for that, so I could see all the upcoming things without having to actually go to the event calendar. And I also I don't treat this like an inbox, like email or something. Sometimes I get behind and these numbers start getting really, really big. And when that happens, I just hit mark all as read and keep it moving. I don't get stressed out about the fact that I'm behind on my reading because it's just going to keep coming anyway. If I ever want to go back and look at things I missed, I always can do that. But it's not one more thing to check. I want this to be something that I enjoy doing when I come to do the reading. This is a subscription product. I think I pay $5 a month for this subscription. So once again, that's like a latte. I'm getting that's worth every penny. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to Outlook. I want to show you Outlook calendar stuff. I told you I was going to be going rapid fire. So okay, so this is my calendar. It looks a little crazy. This week's a little insane. It's not always this bad. But one of the things I find really useful is color coding your calendar appointments. So if you attach colors to them, then you can visually at a glance see like what that is, what type of appointment that is. So for example, I use red for anything that I'm teaching. So for this LibCon presentation, I could see right at a glance. If I'm teaching a class, it's red. I can see it right away. It stands out. Or if I have an appointment with a student, any like consultations I do, I use this yellow color. So it's also kind of attention getting. I know I can spot those right away. I know exactly what those are. Or the darker blue, this is my reference desk or my research help desk appointments where I need to be somewhere. I know what those are. And then the green is professional development. So all the LibCon sessions I'm signed up for, any webinars or training, is always going to be in this green color. So I know right away what those are. And this has another advantage too. Color coding it gives you these visual signals, but at the same time, it also, if you color code based on what is in your job description, then you can essentially make it a lot easier for yourself down the road when you're doing reporting. So I can see this is the button right here. So inside of there, you'd set up these categories. That's what Outlook calls them. So you can see right here, I have these different categories: teaching, if I'm doing service or something like that, or outreach, or professional development. So I have all these different categories, but they're all tied to things that are part of my job description. And then when you're doing your performance evaluation at the end of the year, you can just pull these categories and you don't have to search through your calendar. You're just going to have them all. So let's just say I go in here, I want to do a search in my calendar. I can search by category. So I'm going to say, I want to see all my teaching. And there it is. So now I have all the classes I've taught right there because they're all labeled in that same category. So I can go through, I can see all the teaching that I did, or any other category. I can see all the consultations that I did. So this makes doing your annual performance evaluation like super easy, because I know that I used to spend like hours going back through my calendar every single time because I'm like, what did I do again in the last 12 months? And I'm sure, we're all kind of in that same boat. So this is kind of a two-pronged strategy. Okay, so let's say you're setting up a new meeting. I'm going to find an empty spot here. Oh, that's an appointment. I got to do a meeting. Okay, so I'm setting up a meeting with people. So let's just put some people in here. Evan. So I'm looking for a time that we can meet. You could use this, what's called scheduling assistant. So if you click on this scheduling assistant thing up here, you'll get this graph where you can see the other people's times. Oh. Sorry, this Zoom control is in the way. So you can get the other people's times, and you can kind of scroll through, and you could see where there's time that overlaps to find a time that we all can meet. So I can see right here between 12:30 and 1:30, there's a time for all three of us using this scheduling assistant. So now on the 10th, 12:30 to 1:30, there's a time block that I know both of us, all three of us are available. So that's super convenient. And then you can also insert files. So if you go to insert, you can attach a file. So I can attach a file that's relevant to this meeting to the actual calendar appointment. You can attach emails. So I go into Outlook and I can scroll through and I can attach an email. And I do this a lot because I feel it's much easier for me to manage things like this in the calendar, right? So the calendar appointment, I know I have all the files I need for that meeting there. I don't have to go digging for them when the day comes, or I have any relevant email conversation threads all kind of attached into the calendar appointment. You could add Teams links. So now, of course, we're doing everything virtually. So if you click on this Teams button, it's going to shoot in a little Teams link for you. And if you go into the add-ins, you can install the same thing for Zoom. So over here, I have the Zoom add-in installed. I just click on that, and it's going to populate a Zoom meeting invite link right there. Both of those are huge time savers. Okay, let me close this. So one of the other things I love is what's called the reply with meeting button. So let's just say that I have this email from Wendy. And this requires a meeting, right? If I use this little button right here in the toolbar, reply with meeting, I could just click this and it's going to create a meeting with that person or anybody that's on those emails. Here's the title here, and then I could just, and it has the context or the email conversation all here in the body of the appointment, which is awesome. So that's one of the things I use constantly, is this reply with meeting button. Okay, one of the other things you can do is you can copy and paste appointments. This is something that's really helpful too. So let's just say that I create an appointment for myself. I need to work on my Open Educational Resources Committee. Let's say that, right? So I have this, I'm going to categorize that. It's service. Maybe I want to change the reminder to 30 minutes that day. Now I save this appointment. So now I have this OER committee appointment for me to work on. But if I highlight it and then I just do Control C, I can then come and paste this elsewhere, anywhere, and it's going to replicate any of the metadata that you attach to it, like your reminders. If I had files in there, it would copy those too. So this is a super easy way to kind of replicate appointments rather than having to do them over and over again. Another thing that's useful is using ICS files. So ICS files are essentially calendar appointment files, and these things are kind of everywhere. You just have to know where to look for them. So I'm going to go to libcal real quick. Oh, of course. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the event calendar for libcon. So let's say I want to go to this session tomorrow. I'm going to click on this. Here's the libkey plugin session. If I click on this little calendar icon right here, it's going to download this ICS file for me. And then I just open up the ICS file and it's an appointment ready to go. I don't have to actually manually put that in. I could do the categories, whatever I need to do. So these are, sometimes I'm surprised now when I see an event that doesn't have ICS files, but so I know the university uses Eventbrite website to manage a lot of events. So Eventbrite has them. So this is a Northeastern event. And if you click on this add to calendar link right here, it'll download an ICS file with this time and date and everything. And if you're doing an event yourself, you can actually create your own ICS files. So if I was doing an event, let's just say, I'm just going to say event, I could do a save as, and then it'll save as an ICS or iCalendar format file. So then I can attach that to an email. So I send out, maybe I'm doing a book club or something, I can attach that to the email. So then anybody that wants to go to that, it's optional. They can just use that ICS file in the email. It makes it a lot easier for anybody that's registering for your event. They don't have to actually do the calendar themselves. And the last thing I want to show you with calendar is something I do a lot when I'm teaching classes, where I'll put reminders to myself in the title of an appointment. So a lot of times I'll have a faculty member reach out to me and say, hey, could you come teach this class with me? And it's going to be on September 10th, let's say, and they'll have the information for the class, but they won't know what the room number is. This happens to me a lot. So I'll say something like professor, or I'll say like biz 1001. I know the time, I know the date, I know that it's going to be a class, so I'm going to hit it with the teaching label, but I don't know the room number. So what I'll do is I'll add this reminder. I'll say need room number. So I'll say this need room number in the title, right? So then when I'm looking at my calendar later, if I see this there, I'll remember, oh, I need to follow up with that faculty member because they were supposed to get back to me, but they didn't. And usually I'm reviewing next week's calendar kind of like at the end of the week. So I'll spot this and I'll be able to remember that I need to do that. So I found that to be super helpful. And then once I get the information, I just go ahead and go back in there and change the title. Okay. I'm running out of time, so I got to keep it moving. All right, so the next piece of software that I use is called Text Expander. So this is a text expansion software. So this is a desktop application and it's Windows only, but there are like Apple versions of this. So essentially you can, no matter what operating system you're using, there's going to be a text expansion client that you can use. And what this does is you create what are called snippets of text that you can then use like a command or keyword to insert into whatever, like email or a Word document or wherever you want to insert. So what I use this for is for responding to frequently asked questions. So a lot of times I'll get questions that I have a similar response for that I'm answering all the time. So I use it for that. So sometimes, I'll get a student reach out to me and say, hey, can I set up a meeting with you to discuss my project? So then I just type in my calendar thing and it populates this, right? So this is my appointment snippet. It has the quick, and it has the link in here to my Outlook calendar. Or I get a lot of requests for market research, like proprietary market research that's super expensive. That, they're like, hey, could you buy this $5,000 market research file for me? So I have a snippet for that. So what I'll do is I'll say, maybe I think it's because I spelled it wrong. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, so this is like my disclaimer text that I use when I get these emails about market research that we're not going to be buying for people. Another one I get a lot is alumni. They say, what can I use, right? So I have this alumni text that I use where it's just going to pre-populate a lot of different things. I have information in there about BPL resources and other things like that. So this is, and you can put in whatever you want, really. One of the things I have in here is this, because I always forget how to spell Jamor McKim, so I just put that in there. This makes it much easier for me, and I'm not worried about having a typo in there when I send that out. And this is simple to use software. This is what the software itself looks like. So these are all the different snippets that I have. I just say, if I want to make another one, I say, whatever I want to say right here. And then the abbreviation is the command that you use to insert that. So simple. If this is paid software, once again, I can't remember what the annual license is. I think it's like $30 a year, but it saves me a ton of time. Okay, so the next one is a piece of software called Unroll.me. So actually, Brooke Williams showed me this when I first came to Northeastern. So this is actually a free application. It's web-based, where what it does is it manages all the email subscriptions that you have. So all the subscriptions in your email that clog up your email account. So you set up an account with them. It plugs into, I think, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, like most of the major email clients you could set up with that. And then it kind of scans your inbox and it looks at all these. So you can see right here, 393 email subscriptions. So you can see all the different email subscriptions. It's nuts. But it gives you, so it lets you manage them all in one place. So there's three options. I can either unsubscribe. So if I wanted to, I could just be like, click, 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 and get rid of all these, which is super easy. Or I could say keep in inbox, and then that'll just leave it alone, and it'll keep showing up in my inbox the way it always has. And then the last option is you can add it to this, what they call a roll-up, which is essentially like a digest email. So if I add 20 of these subscriptions to this roll-up, instead of getting those emails anymore, I'll just get this one roll-up email that has all 20 of them inside of it, which is nice. So this is a no-brainer. It's a great tool for managing your email subscriptions. All right, I'm getting there. So the next tool I want to talk about is called Instapaper. So this is a web-based application that essentially what it does is you could save websites into it so you could read them later, right? So here's an article on Mashable about NASA releasing a trailer for their Mars launch, right? So let's say I want to read this later. So I have my Instapaper account, and then I have this button on my bookmark toolbar that saves it to my Instapaper. So maybe I'm about to run to a meeting. I see this, I click iSave, and then this little thing pops up saying saved. And now this is kind of saved in my Instapaper. I could read this later. Back in the good old days, I could read it on the way home from work on the T or something. And that's cool. But where Instapaper really shines is where it helps you with just the horrendous reading experience that the internet is. I mean, look at this. It's terrible. You got banners popping up here. You got this banner takes up like a huge portion of the screen. You got the ads moving over here on the side, scrolling through. There's videos playing. Then there's a bunch of other moving things and more ads. I mean, it's just horrible. So everybody understands this. The reading experience online is a nightmare, but they have this text filter. So I have this button over here that says text. I click on this, and what it's going to do is it's going to reformat that website. So it just strips out all those things and gives you this nice e-ink kind of reading layout, which is beautiful. So, and when you save anything to Instapaper, it does this automatically. So this is, I wouldn't browse without it. It's unbelievably awesome tool for making reading on the internet actually possible. Okay, I can do this. I got two more. All right, so the next one is called Web of Trust. So that's why it says WOT, Web of Trust. So this is a browser extension, and essentially, they have it for all the major browsers. And you install this, and what it is a database of crowdsourced website reviews, essentially. So all the websites get a review. So if I do a search for something, right? So let's say I'm looking for free credit report. So you're going to see these little colored icons right next to it, and it tells you the green means that it's got a good reputation. So you can see right here, reputation's good. And then there's other ones that get flagged. So credit reports is something where you can get your free credit report from the credit reporting agencies. Every year you're entitled to one free credit report. But then there's a really shady website called freecreditreport.com that is charging people money for this, right? So then you can see this orange, and then they have this, it's been flagged by suspicious because of all the different people that have rated this in the Web of Trust database. So it gives you this real quick tool at a glance where you can see maybe there's a website that you might want to take a second look at. And it gives you a button up here in the toolbar that shows you if you're on a website, what the rating of that is. And if this was a really malicious site, like one that's going to install a virus or spyware or something like that, it would have a red icon here. And then you wouldn't even be able to click on that. If you clicked on it, Web of Trust there'd be a warning that would pop up and say, are you sure that you want to go to this website? So it saved me a number of times. The internet can be a shady place, so something like this is nice to have in your back pocket. All right, and the last one I want to show you is called OneTab. So this is another Chrome extension. I'm a self-confessed tabaholic. I let my tabs get completely out of control. As you can see, I already have a ton, but let's just get a bunch more in here so I can make it look like it normally does. I'm just going to open a whole bunch of tabs. So now I have a ton of tabs. So what OneTab does is OneTab will take all your open tabs and just like dump them onto a single tab. So there's this little button right here in my toolbar. I click OneTab, and then bam, it takes all those tabs and then sticks them into this one tab, which is awesome. And then I can go back through and I can see the different days that I've archived different tabs, and it lets me start fresh without having to get my tabaholic habit under control, which I personally love. And I did it. 6 minutes to spare.
Did great. You did have one question in the chat, Kyle.
I'm gonna stop my share here. Like I said, I know that's crazy amount of information. The handout is got everything in there, all the information about the applications and everything I talked about, so you can look at that later.
Yes, I'm putting that handout into the chat now. Feel free to copy and paste. And we did have one question for you, Kyle. Evie asked, does InnoReader work for listservs as well?
Yes, yeah, I have all my listservs in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great for that because I don't want those clogging up my my inbox either. Well, I mean, oh, is there another question? Thank you.
A lot of compliments, though. Be sure you
thanks.
check that out. And I do have a handout in the chat now, so everybody can take a look.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, in the end, you got to try what, like I said in the beginning, you got to use what works for you. Most of these ones have a free trial essentially attached to them, so you could try them out, decide whether or not it's going to be worth it to you to subscribe to something like this. Try one at a time, see how it works. If it doesn't work, then move on.